f*** it is the f***ing DMR! What the f*** is this bullshit? What the f***?
So, it is kinda weird that I'm revisiting this gun so soon. I mean, to be fair, I only talked about the fully automatic version of the weapon, which is functionally speaking a completely different gun. But they do have the same name, so it is still kinda confusing. Anyway, the SO-14, more specifically the base, semi-automatic version of the weapon. This is arguably the best gun in the entire game. In fact, I'd go as far as saying that this is one of the strongest weapons in CODM's history, period. In any semi-decent ranked lobby, around half the players would be using this stupid gun. But with the Season 4 balance changes, the SO-14 caught a nerf. So naturally, some of you will be wondering if that will still be the case. In this video, I'll be talking about what changed with the weapon's stats, and most importantly, answering the question, did they kill the SO-14? But before we can talk about the stats of the weapon, we need to cover what changed with the SO-14. In the Season 4 update, the SO-14 caught two different nerfs. The first one is to the base weapon itself. Its stomach multiplier has been reduced from 1x to 0.95x. This means that in the second damage phase, the SO-14 can no longer 2-tap to the stomach. You will now need at least one of your shots to hit the upper body. It has also received a nerf to the 50-round drums. This attachment now penalizes the head damage multiplier, reducing it by 0.1. This, again, mainly impacts the second damage phase as it loses the ability to 1-tap to the head past the initial damage phase. This attachment will still be a viable option because it doesn't change the fact that a 50-round drum on a 2-tap weapon is still fucking absurd, but there is now a valid reason to not run this mag, that being to preserve the one-shot headshot range. With that out of the way, we can now talk about the actual stats of the weapon. I'll be comparing the SO-14 against the Type 63 and SKS. You guys already know the drill by this point, say it with me. Starting off with the lethality, the SO-14 has a godly 2-tap time to kill potential of 145 milliseconds. This is faster than the SKS and nearly identical to the Type 63 with the 16.4-inch titanium barrel. Some will say that this is identical to the Odin as well, but considering that this is a semi-automatic weapon, there is no guarantee that you'll achieve the fire rate cap on a consistent basis. What is guaranteed though is its 2-tap potential within 16.5 meters, as it can 2-tap even with both leg shots. This is a very unique feature of the weapon, as the only other DMR that can do this, that is actually good, is the M67 AMAX, but that gun fires way slower than the SO-14, meaning that its time to kill is nowhere as good. Beyond this range, the SO-14 will require you to land at least one upper body shot to 2-tap, assuming you don't get a leg shot up to 33 meters. This is pretty much identical to the Type 63 within its second damage phase. Within the first two damage phases, the SO-14 can 1-tap to the head, assuming you aren't using the 50-round drums, making it very effective against head glitches and can even be a lifesaver if you get lucky. When it comes to accuracy, the SO-14 is a bit of an interesting case. The DMRs in the marksman rifle category do not have BSA, so each shot lands exactly where your crosshair is, although it can still be affected by recoil and idle sway. On the other hand, the DMRs from the assault rifle category do have BSA. The SO-14 seemingly breaks this rule, as it too, despite being under the marksman rifle category, has BSA, so your shots will have some slight deviation from your point of aim. But do not, under any conditions, use this as an excuse for your bad aim, as it is still tight enough that it won't be a real factor in most engagements. Recoil is incredibly low. The Type 63, SKS and M1 Garand have a sudden vertical jump after the initial shot, but the SO-14 doesn't have this. In fact, it has the least recoil out of all the DMRs, which allows it to be dangerously accurate at range. You basically don't need to pull down whatsoever. Hit flinch is another factor worth considering, since this is a precision weapon that requires you to not miss. The SO-14's hit flinch comes in at 0.65. This is in line with assault rifles, so this won't be an issue in most engagements unless you're facing a RAL. While the Type 63's hit flinch is a bit lower than the SO-14's, keep in mind that that weapon requires the airborne elastic wrap to achieve this value, while the SO-14 just gets the low hit flinch out of the box. This means that the SO-14 doesn't need to waste any of its attachment slots to achieve a good hit flinch. allowing you to spec into other stats such as mobility. I should also point out that the SO-14 has really good hipfire accuracy for a weapon class that is notorious for having a horrendous hipfire spread. This makes it the only DMR in which spamming hipfire up close is a viable strat, especially when you consider that its 2-tap up close is guaranteed. Since we are on the topic of close range, we should address its mobility and handling. This is pretty much the best part of the weapon. Its ADS time is the fastest out of all the semi-automatic weapons at 234 milliseconds, which is about as fast as some SMGs. This combined with its incredibly fast sprint to fire time of 112 milliseconds means that you can react very quickly in skirmish gunfights and make use of its 2-tap potential. Mobility is also very impressive, sprinting at 6.38 meters per second and strafing at 3.12 meters per second. This is comparable to some of the faster flex ARs and is top tier for DMR standards. The only semi-automatic weapon that beats this is the AS Val FMJ, but that gun makes sacrifices to its ADS time, mag size, 2-tap consistency, and fire rate to achieve this. Magazine capacity is standard for DMRs at 20 rounds, and its reload time is also pretty comparable, taking 1.48 seconds for its tactical reload and 1.54 seconds when reloading from empty. And if you want to, it has the option for an absurd 50 round mag, which will give you LMG levels of sustainability, although this comes at the cost of mobility, handling, reload time, and about half of your one-shot headshot range. So this gun seems to check pretty much all the boxes: top tier lethality profile, consistent multipliers, next to no recoil, low hit flinch, tight hipfire spread, along with amazing handling and mobility. So what's the catch? Well, if you're paying attention when I was talking about the lethality, you'd know that it is the range. Unlike the Type 63 and SKS, the SO-14 does not possess an unlimited 2-tap potential, realistically capping out at 33 meters. Beyond this range, the 2-tap becomes way too inconsistent, so it will pretty much always be a 3-tap. Its one-shot headshot range is also limited to this range, meaning that it is not quite as effective against hit glitches at longer ranges. This range drops down even further if you have the 50 round drums, all the way down to 16.5 meters. And there's also the obvious of being a DMR, which means that it is semi-automatic. Instead of holding down the fire button, you have to press it for every single shot. If you only play on thumbs, you'll find issues in using this weapon, but this is not unique to the SO-14 as this applies to every other DMR. Wait, that's it? Yes, I shit you not, those are the only downsides of the weapon, making this the shortest downside section in the history of this channel. The limited 2-tap range seems bad until you realize that 33 meters is still enough for roughly 90% of the engagements you'll find in standard multiplayer. And it's not like it's unusable at range. The 3-tap time to kill is 290 milliseconds, assuming you hit the max fire rate, which is still really good, and because of how accurate it is still much stronger than the majority of weapons in the game, since you're missing a lot less. If anything, the limited 2-tap range only encourages you to play in close to mid ranges, more like a semi-automatic assault rifle rather than a traditional precision weapon, which this weapon is absolutely capable of because of how good its mobility, handling, and hipfire accuracy are, meaning that this weapon is effectively a semi-automatic Odin with a shit ton less recoil, a shit ton more mobility, a shit ton more 2-tap consistency, and even the ability to one-shot headshot. When you treat it as such, the limited 2-tap range is hardly even a downside. So the only real con of the weapon is the fact that it is semi-automatic, and this is a massive fucking problem. Being semi-automatic is not a real downside, because for anyone who plays with more than 2 fingers, which is honestly anyone who takes the game seriously, this no longer exists, and it effectively becomes the perfect weapon that has top tier everything with no downside. Every other DMR has some kind of downside alongside the fact that it is semi-automatic. The SKS has slow mobility and handling. The M1 Garen has poor mobility and 2-tap consistency outside of the second damage phase. The M67 ABAX, AS Val FMJ, and Type 19 DMR have slow fire rates. The only one that comes close is the Type 63, but even then, it is nowhere as mobile and its bullet speed is relatively slow for a precision weapon. Some of you will say that because not everyone can use it, the SO-14 is balanced, but this statement cannot be further from the truth. Let us look at an example. Back in 2020 to 2021, sniper rifles used to be way stronger than they are today. They had much faster ADS time, around 100 milliseconds faster, and they had way lower hit flinch as the ADS time boosting attachment did not penalize it at all. As long as you played with more than 2 fingers, you basically had an assault rifle that could insta-kill at any range. Now, this shit was not the easiest thing to pull off. Not everyone can use it effectively. You had to familiarize yourself with the quickscope timing and be very precise with your aim, because the fire rate is so slow that you're pretty much screwed if you miss. But is it fair and fun to fight against?
Hell no!
The moment the player gets over that initial hurdle, they could very easily shut down most lobbies, as it was near impossible to counter unless the enemy pulls out their own sniper rifle. Given that the overall time to kill was a good bit slower than it is today, this made pretty much every other non-sniper redundant, which is a big problem in a game which features weapon variety as one of its core traits. The SO-14 is in a very similar boot camp. You can argue that it is even easier to use since even the prime sniper rifles had slow fire rates. This gun doesn't. Bad players may not be able to maximize this weapon's potential effectively, but anyone who can, which is not a small portion of the player base, essentially has the perfect weapon that can do anything. Obviously, it has the long-range performance of a DMR thanks to its accuracy and time to kill at range, but it can also compete with assault rifles and SMGs at close to mid-range due to its mobility and handling. In fact, it usually beats them on a consistent basis. And if you're using the 50-round drums, it can even double as an LMG. This is a classic case of a moderate floor, but unlimited ceiling weapon. Even if it does have some semblance of a skill requirement, there still needs to be some kind of limit as to what this weapon can do, because right now, it does way too much. There's a reason that this weapon got banned in competitive play. Normally they ban just the attachments of a weapon, but no, they ban the entire fucking gun. That should tell you how much of a problem this weapon is. Okay, so this was supposed to be the part where I suggest nerfs to the weapon, but then the patch notes for Season 5, the next season, just released at the time of me editing this video, and the SO-14 got nerfed. Again, this time they reduced the overall mobility. Its base movement speed has gone down from 4.45 meters per second to 4.28 meters per second, and its sprint multiplier has gone down from 1.3x to 1.25x, resulting in a sprint speed of 5.53 meters per second instead of the previous 5.79. So when you factor in the optimal build, its sprint speed has been significantly reduced from 6.38 meters per second to 5.9 meters per second. So you go from borderline SMG to borderline LMG levels of mobility. This also indirectly reduces the strafe speed, going from 3.12 meters per second to 2.83 meters per second. In addition to this, the devs added a minus 30% bullet speed penalty to the 16-inch chrome line RFX 40 barrel. This means that with the optimal build, the SO-14's bullet speed goes from 1170 meters per second to 900 meters per second, which is slightly slower than the Type 63. This will still be a go-to attachment as the mobility and handling improvements are way too good to pass up, but it no longer has the bullet speed advantage over the Type 63. Now, from a game balancing point of view, I am not the biggest fan of these changes. The main feature of the SO-14 is its mobility and handling, which allows it to play more like a semi-automatic assault rifle. By nuking its mobility, you basically turn it into a Type 63 that can't 2-tap up to infinity. Sure, it has the guaranteed 2-tap up close, but now that you no longer have the movement speed to keep up with assault rifles, getting value out of this is going to be way harder as you're now forced to take on a more passive role. A role which, in case you didn't know, focuses more on mid to longer ranges and would heavily favor having that unlimited 2-tap potential of the Type 63. I'm not going to say that they killed the SO-14 with these changes, it still has a use if you're looking for an easy to use DMR that trades range for better odds in close encounters. But this does mean that the Type 63 is going to be the better overall DMR thanks to its unlimited 2-tap and one-shot headshot potential, similar fire rate along with better mobility after the nerfs. Just to make it clear, I am not complaining. A nerf to an overpowered weapon in any form is very much welcome. But personally, I would have done something completely different. The first thing I do is scrap the upcoming Season 5 nerfs. These go against the main function of the weapon. What it should have been is a highly mobile semi-automatic weapon with lower 2-tap consistency. The Season 4 nerfs are in the right direction for this reason, although we can take it a step further since it is still a little too consistent for what it has to offer. What I suggest is reworking the damage profile, going from 60, 52, 48 to 55, 50, 48. This new damage profile will greatly impact the 2-tap consistency in the first and second damage phases. In the initial damage phase, the SO-14 will no longer 2-tap if both shots hit the legs. At least one of your shots needs to hit the stomach and above. No DMR of this fire rate should be able to 2-tap legs. As for the second damage phase, landing just a single stomach shot will result in a 3-tap, so now you'll need both shots to hit the upper body. This forces the player to be way more precise with their aim to maximize its lethality. If it's going to have better mobility, handling and accuracy than the Type 63, then it should, in the very least, be less consistent as well. Also, I will restrict the 50 round drums to only be available when the Wildfire perk is equipped. 50 rounds in a 2-tap weapon should not be a thing in general. That just turns it into a more lethal LMG. With these nerfs, the SO-14 should be way more balanced, while most importantly, not losing its distinct identity. When it comes to building the SO-14, we'll be focusing on maximizing its mobility and handling. Start with the Polar Fire S for range and concealment, the 16-inch Chromeline RFX 40 barrel for mobility and handling, the SO-R55 adapter stock for extra sprint speed and to open up the rear grip slot, FSS Gen 7 grip to make the ADS time even faster, and the disable perk for the slow and hit. If you don't like the base iron sights and don't have a good blueprint, you can replace the perk with an optic of preference for better visibility. If you want a larger mag and don't mind losing the one-shot headshot range, use the 50 round drums instead. And if you want an even faster ADS time, you can use the Schlager PEQ box for laser. And that covers everything there is to know about the SO-14. While I do understand that these weapons have to be strong in order to sell the mythic, this is just taking the fucking piss. It is way too good at everything for what is supposed to be a specialized weapon class. This is to the point that I don't even use this weapon that often because I find it unethical. But that's just my experience from using the weapon, so how do you guys feel about the SO-14? Do you agree that it is overpowered and needs a nerf, or do you somehow think that it is balanced? Be sure to let me know in the comments, and if you found the video helpful, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. But until then, I'll be seeing you in the next
108 101 97 103 117 101